In a quiet grocery aisle, a mother is wrongly accused, handcuffed in front of her child for a crime she didn't commit. But one small voice refuses to stay silent. He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He hit record. And what he captured changed everything. This is the story of how a 10-year-old turned a moment of fear into a national reckoning, and how love, truth, and courage lit the fuse. Watch The Boy Who Filmed Justice. You won't forget it. The sky was grey, the kind of overcast morning that promised nothing and delivered even less. Tasha Rivers zipped up Malik's light jacket and kissed the top of his head before they stepped outside. "Let's make it quick, baby. I still gotta get to my shift by noon." Malik, her 10-year-old son, nodded, clutching his little sketchbook under his arm. He was quiet today, but that wasn't unusual. Tasha had come to cherish the kind of silence that hummed with peace, not fear. The grocery store was only a few blocks away, nestled between a payday loan office and a laundromat. Inside, the lights were too bright, the linoleum floors slightly sticky, and the overhead music tinny and out of tune. Still, it was familiar. Tasha picked up bread, eggs, and juice. Then, on instinct, she reached for a pack of diapers. Not for herself, but for her neighbor's baby. Miss Geneva had bad knees and no car. Tasha always tried to help where she could. She got to the checkout and swiped her card. Declined. She frowned and tried again. Declined. Behind her, a man with a cart full of chips and soda huffed. A cashier clicked her tongue. "You wanna try another card?" the woman asked. Not unkindly. Tasha sighed. "No, it's okay. I'll just put the diapers back." But before she could move, a uniformed store manager stepped forward, arms folded tight. "Ma'am, we have reason to believe you're attempting to shoplift." "Excuse me," Tasha blinked. He motioned to security. "You put the diapers in your bag before you tried to pay. That's theft." Malik stood frozen, his small frame wedged behind the shopping cart. "I was going to pay," Tasha protested. "The card didn't go through. I said I was putting them back." But no one was listening. The security guard had already radioed someone, and moments later, a police officer entered the store, tall, stocky, white. His hand rested on his belt. Tasha lifted both palms. "This is a misunderstanding. Please, my son is here." "Turn around," the officer said. "Sir, please," she begged. Malik began to cry. "Mom?" The officer grabbed her arms and twisted them behind her back. Cold cuffs clicked around her wrists. Tasha's purse hit the floor. "You're under arrest for attempted theft," he said mechanically. "You have the right to remain silent." "Please, I didn't steal anything," Tasha sobbed. She turned her face, searching for her son. "Malik, it's okay, don't be scared." But Malik wasn't just scared. He was furious. Tears streaming, he pulled out his phone. His hands trembled as he pressed record. He filmed the cuffs, the officer's hand on her back, the manager's smug face, his mother crying. No one noticed him filming. No one ever noticed kids like Malik. They led Tasha out past the registers, past the rows of candy and tabloid magazines, past the open mouths of strangers who didn't know her story and didn't care to learn. Malik followed, still filming. At the door, a woman, maybe a mother herself, reached out to touch his shoulder. "Sweetheart, do you need someone to call?" Malik nodded, his voice caught in his throat. "My Aunt Dee." The woman took his phone, found the contact and called. 10 minutes later, Aunt Dee pulled up in her beat-up Honda, her eyes wide with alarm. Malik ran into her arms. "They took her," he sobbed. "They said she stole something, but she didn't." Aunt Dee cupped his face. "You saw it all?" He nodded. "I recorded it." He handed her the phone. Aunt Dee watched the video, her jaw clenched, her eyes filled. "Oh baby," she said, "you just changed everything." Jalen had always been a quiet, observant kid. While his mother was being handcuffed, he didn't cry, he didn't scream, he didn't even move, at least not in the way the officers expected. Instead, his small hands reached into his backpack and pulled out the cracked iPhone his mom had saved months to buy him. And he hit record. The video started with shaky footage of his mother, Ayana, pressed against the side of a Walmart refrigerator case. The reflection in the glass showed the badge numbers of the officers. Her arms were twisted behind her back, eyes wide with disbelief. I paid for them, she said, voice hoarse with shock. Check the receipt in my bag, please. My son's watching. Jalen kept the phone steady. A woman in a red vest, store management, stood stiffly to the side, arms crossed. You can explain it downtown, one officer snapped, cuffing her tighter. But my baby, please. Ma'am, do not resist. The phone trembled for a second. Then Jalen whispered, you're hurting her. But it didn't register with anyone. No one turned. No one listened. Until later. That night, Jalen sat on the couch at their small apartment, knees pulled to his chest. CPS had dropped him off after taking his mother to the precinct, saying she'd be held overnight for questioning. He didn't know what that meant. He only knew that his mom hadn't done anything wrong. So he uploaded the video. He didn't caption it, just titled it, "My mom got arrested for buying diapers." He wasn't trying to start a revolution, he was just trying to bring his mom home. The clip started circulating on TikTok that night. By morning it had 3.2 million views. By noon it was on CNN, and by 6 p.m., Jalen Daniels' name was trending on every major platform in the country. What made the video go viral wasn't just the cruelty, it was the context. A receipt fluttered to the ground in the video, timestamp visible. The diapers had in fact been purchased. The officer never picked it up. The child's voice whispering, "Please don't hurt my mom," hit people like a gut punch. People started asking questions. How does a mother get arrested for something she clearly paid for? Why did the store employee assume she was stealing? Why were the officers so quick to act? And why, after it was all over, had CPS taken the child for hours without cause? An anonymous lawyer reposted the video with annotations pointing out illegal procedures. A prominent civil rights activist tweeted, "This isn't just about diapers, it's about dignity." And then came the comment that really blew it open. "CPS has been harassing that family for months. I work there. We tried to report it. It was buried in a long thread under the video, posted by someone with a burner account. But within an hour, journalists started digging. Whispers turned into interviews. FOIA requests were filed. The thread claimed that the Daniels family had been flagged by a CPS worker named Valerie Horn, who, according to leaked internal notes, had doubts about the mother's ability to provide stability due to employment gaps and defensive behavior. But Ayana had a job. She was a nurse's aide working night shifts. The gaps were hospital layoffs and a COVID diagnosis. As the story grew, so did the anger. This wasn't just about one woman in cuffs. It was about a system that judged poor black mothers with a different lens. It was about how easily dignity could be stripped in the fluorescent aisles of a chain store. The video was played on Good Morning America. Ayana was released quietly that afternoon. No apology given. When she stepped out of the police station, a small crowd had gathered, and in the center, holding a handmade sign in crayon that read, "I knew you did nothing, Mom," was Jalen. She dropped her bag and ran to him, and the cameras kept rolling. For a few days, Ayana and Jalen lived in a whirlwind of support. Neighbors they barely knew dropped off groceries. A local nonprofit offered to cover legal fees. A city councilwoman publicly called for an investigation into Ayana's arrest and the store's handling of the incident. But not everyone was clapping. On the fifth day, a knock came at their door. It was CPS. Again. A new caseworker, this time a stone-faced woman with a clipboard and a rehearsed smile. "Just a wellness check," she said. Given the public attention, Ayana stood frozen, one hand on Jalen's shoulder. "He's fine. He's always been fine." The woman's eyes swept over their modest apartment. "There have been concerns about emotional distress, about the environment. There are new questions regarding media exposure and parental decisions." "You mean the video?" Ayana asked, her voice trembling. The caseworker didn't respond. Jalen clung to his mother's side. Ayana stayed calm for him, but when the door finally shut, she collapsed onto the couch, breathless. "They're still trying to take you," she whispered. The phone rang. It was her lawyer. "You need to be careful, Ayana," he warned. "I've seen this before. Public support is a shield. But the system doesn't like being embarrassed. They're digging." "What about the officer who arrested me?" she asked. "The woman at the store. Quietly transferred," he replied. "No apology, no accountability, and CPS isn't budging either. They're pushing for an internal review of your parenting." Ayana felt like the walls were closing in. She was being punished not just for the original false arrest, but for surviving it publicly. She thought of Jalen, how he'd curled into her at night since that awful day, how he asked if he was bad for recording it, how he worried the video had made everything worse. But it hadn't. It had shown the truth. She picked up her phone and opened her email. There were thousands of unread messages, most offering support, a few sending threats, but one stood out. Subject: "They tried this to my sister too." It was from a woman in another state. She wrote that CPS had targeted her family after she spoke at a school board meeting about racial disparities. They used concern reports to justify home visits, then twisted harmless family dynamics into warning signs. "Do not back down," she wrote. "Sunlight is your only protection. The more people who see what's happening, the harder it is for them to bury it." Ayanna knew what she had to do. The next morning she walked into a crowded press conference hosted by the city's civil rights group. She wore a simple navy blouse. Jalen held her hand. When she stepped up to the podium, the room hushed. "My name is Jalen Daniels," she began, voice steady but raw. "I am a mother, a nurse, and a citizen of this country. Last week I was arrested for buying diapers. Not because I broke the law, but because I fit a profile." She paused. "Since then I've learned that the system's meant to protect us. Police, child services, corporate security can turn on families like mine with frightening speed. My son recorded the truth, and for that we are being punished." Reporters scribbled furiously. "I'm not here for pity. I'm here to say enough. Enough of the silence. Enough of the assumptions. Enough of the power games played on the backs of children." The crowd broke into applause. That night, her full speech aired on several national networks. News anchors called it an inflection point in how America treats black families under scrutiny. And the next morning CPS knocked again. But this time Ayanna had more than just resolve. She had lawyers, she had camera crews, she had allies. She opened the door with her phone recording and said, "If you want to talk, we do it on record." The caseworker hesitated, then turned away. Ayanna turned to Jalen and whispered, "They're watching now." He looked up at her and nodded. "Good." Jalen Daniels was only 10 years old, but in the days that followed, people stopped seeing him as just a kid. He had become something else. A witness. A symbol. A spark. It started with a clip he posted himself, separate from the one that had gone viral. It was shakier, unpolished, recorded on an old tablet from their couch with him sitting cross-legged in his Spider-Man pajamas. "Hi," he said softly, eyes wide but calm. "My name is Jalen. I took the video of my mom at the store because I was scared, and I didn't know what else to do." He swallowed, blinked hard. "They said she stole diapers, but she didn't. I watched her pay. I watched everything. I know what the truth looks like." The video wasn't fancy, but it hit like lightning. Millions of views, hundreds of thousands of comments. People weren't just seeing a news clip. They were seeing a child fighting to protect his mom. His innocence stripped away for all to see. One comment read, "We failed this kid, but he didn't fail us." That night, Ayanna stood at the doorframe of his room, watching him draw dinosaurs under a lamp like nothing had changed. But everything had. "You okay?" she asked softly. Jalen looked up. "Yeah, but why are people calling me brave?" "I was scared." Ayanna stepped in, sat beside him. "Brave doesn't mean not scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are." He thought about that, then nodded. The next day, the school invited Jalen to speak at an assembly. Ayanna hesitated at first, worried about spotlighting him even more. But Jalen surprised her. "I want to," he said. "Kids need to know what to do when grown-ups get it wrong." So dressed in his best button-up and sneakers, Jalen stood in front of a sea of students and teachers. His voice was quiet at first, but steady. "Sometimes adults mess up," he said. "Even people who are supposed to protect you. If that happens, it's okay to speak up. It's okay to ask questions. And it's okay to pull out your phone." That last line got a few chuckles. But it also got nods, because every kid in that room knew what it meant to be powerless. And here was someone their own age showing what power could really look like. After the assembly, a teacher approached Ayanna with tears in her eyes. "My own son watched Jalen's video," she said. "He told me he wants to be like him, the kid who stood up." Then came the invitations. An interview with a major talk show. A documentary filmmaker wanted to feature them in a short film about family and resilience. Civil rights organizations reached out, asking Jalen to be part of a youth-led media literacy project. But through it all, Ayanna stayed grounded. Only if it doesn't cost him his peace, she told the producers. No story is worth my son's spirit. They understood, and they adjusted. Jalen got to speak from home, surrounded by his drawings, his comic books, his favorite snacks. A quiet revolution happening from a 10-year-old's bedroom. The most powerful part of the documentary wasn't his footage. It was what he said about it. I didn't record because I wanted to go viral. I recorded because I wanted my mom to be safe. That's it. And then, without prompting, he added, people think kids don't notice stuff, but we do. We notice everything. The nation listened. So did Congress. Within 2 weeks, a congresswoman introduced the Family Dignity Act, a bill aimed at preventing wrongful CPS interventions and mandating transparency in arrest procedures involving minors. The bill was imperfect, still full of loopholes, but it was a start. And its name, the Jalen Daniels provision. Ayanna stared at the headline on her phone the night it passed through committee. Her hand trembled. Her heart did too. Jalen curled up beside her on the couch, peeked over her shoulder. Is that about me? She nodded. It's because you didn't look away, because you believed in what was right. He smiled, small and sleepy. Can I get pancakes tomorrow? Ayanna laughed, eyes full. You can have pancakes every day for a week. Because for the first time in a long time, they could breathe. 3 months later, the world had moved on. The headlines faded, hashtags cooled. But for Ayanna and Jalen Daniels, life had changed in ways that could never be undone. The grocery store chain issued a public apology, but only after Jalen's video was played during a televised committee hearing. The officer who had handcuffed Ayanna that day was placed on unpaid leave, later quietly transferred to another district. No formal apology was ever made, but Ayanna wasn't waiting for one. She had something better. Peace. It didn't come all at once. At first, she kept flinching every time she walked past the baby aisle. She still scanned over her shoulder in stores, still felt the quiet heat of judgment on her skin when other customers stared too long. But now, when she looked down, Jalen was there standing tall beside her, not just as her son but as her protector. And the world had started to see him that way too. One Saturday morning, Ayanna took Jalen to a youth summit in Atlanta. He was invited to speak on a panel titled Voices They Tried to Silence. He was the youngest on stage by nearly a decade. Still, when the mic was passed to him, Jalen didn't hesitate. Some people think kids can't make change, he said, eyes scanning the crowd. But I think we just see things adults forget how to look for. We don't overthink what's right, we just know it. The auditorium stood to their feet. Ayanna watched from the wings, her chest tight with pride. Her baby boy, once trembling in a grocery store aisle, now moving hearts in a room full of policymakers, journalists, and dreamers. But the biggest shift came quietly, not from politicians, not from news anchors. It came from parents. Emails flooded Ayanna's inbox. Messages from other single mothers, fathers raising kids on their own, foster parents, families in rural towns, families in cities, families who had never seen themselves in stories like this until now. I've been that mother. Thank your son for me. He gave me courage to speak up at my daughter's school. I cried watching your story, not because it shocked me, but because it didn't. One message stood out. It was from a former CPS caseworker. She had resigned after years of watching her reports rewritten, her warnings ignored, her black clients targeted. She wrote, "When your son said we notice everything, it broke me, because I knew he was right. I saw it happen, again and again. I left the system because I couldn't bear being complicit anymore. I want to help you build something better." That message led to something Ayanna never thought she'd be part of: reform. She began working with grassroots coalitions, first as a speaker, then as a consultant. Her background as a healthcare assistant paired with lived experience made her voice impossible to ignore. Within 6 months, she helped develop a pilot program focused on bias intervention training for CPS agents and law enforcement officers interacting with families. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was growing. One afternoon, Ayana picked Jalen up from school. He bounded into the car, backpack bouncing. "You won't believe what happened," he grinned. "My teacher showed our class the article about us." "Oh really?" She smiled. "Yeah, and guess what? Now they want me to help lead a media club, like teaching kids how to record things safely, how to speak up." Ayana reached over and squeezed his hand. "You're turning your pain into purpose." He shrugged. "I'm just doing what you taught me. Pay attention, be kind, don't be quiet when it matters." They drove home in silence for a while, comfortable silence. That night, Jalen sat at the dining table, drawing. Ayana leaned over his shoulder. He was sketching a cartoon of their family. Him, her, and a tiny dog they didn't have yet but hoped to one day. Above their heads he'd written in block letters, "We're not just surviving anymore, we're showing up." Ayana kissed the top of his head. "Yes, baby, we are." And even though the world hadn't changed overnight, something inside their house had. They had reclaimed their power, and they would never let it be taken again. What is lesson of this story? 1. Never underestimate a child's courage. Sometimes, it's the youngest among us who remind the world what's right and just. 2. Silence protects systems, not people. Speaking up, even when it's scary, can be the start of real change. 3. Your story matters. Whether you're a single parent, a struggling family, or a kid with a smartphone, what you witness, record, and share can save lives and shift power. 4. Love is a force for justice. Ayana didn't fight for a headline, she fought for her son. And Jalen fought back for her. That kind of loyalty cannot be silenced. 5. Change starts when someone refuses to stay invisible. This story reminds us, you don't need a title or badge to lead a revolution. You just need truth and the courage to share it. Thanks for watching this far. If you learned something from this story, or found it meaningful to you, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any interesting stories.